What's up, Planeswalkers? It's your boy K-Dog. Got the first Ikoria standard video for you guys. This one we got a Jeskai list. Playing off some of the new cards, of course. So first off, we're going to look at Vadrok, Apex of Thunder. This is sort of a build around, but it's also just kind of a top end. So just a couple of, as a legendary Vadrok, Apex of Thunder, blue, red, and white for a 3/3 flying first strike. So it's pretty decent. It also has a mutate for 1, and then white or blue and red. When it mutates, we get to cast a non-creature with mana cost 3 or less from our graveyard without paying its mana cost. And so that right there, trying to play cards from our graveyard without paying their mana cost, is kind of the more central theme of the deck. And of course, you cannot mutate onto non-humans. So we're trying to run as many non-human creatures as we can that can kind of follow that non-creature theme. 3 is our top end, so every single thing in our deck that is not a creature spell, we can cast this off of Vadrok with the mutate ability. But of course, Dreadhorde Arcanist is the other card that goes perfectly well with the strategy. It's one of my personal favorite cards in all of Standard right now. Dreadhorde Arcanist, just as a reminder, it's a 1/3 for 2 mana, trample, and when it attacks, we get to play a instant or sorcery with the mana cost equal to the Arcanist power, which is naturally 1, but we do have a couple ways to kind of buff that. Although most of our spells are actually 1 mana anyway, so pretty much everything in our deck it's going to be able to cast and get an extra free spell off of. So that's really sweet. It's a fantastic way to get some card advantage. So another one of the new cards that synergize really well with that is Sprite Dragon. It's a 1/1 flying haste for blue and red. So decent. However, it's super powerful because whenever you cast a non-creature spell, we put a +1/+1 counter on Sprite Dragon. So especially with like the Dreadhorde Arcanist triggers, this thing can get really big really fast. We do have some of the mutate mechanics going on as well, though it's very, very minor. So we'll kind of hopefully see how that plays out. So one of those is Lore Drakkis. It's 1 blue and red for 2/3, so not really too amazing. However, the mutate of red and blue plus red and blue, when it mutates, return instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. So that's pretty powerful with all the spells that we have. So we're just trying to play a bunch of cheap spells to interact with our opponent, get them back for free, or just get them back to our hand and just get as much value as we can out of those cheap instants and sorceries, and just kind of out-tempo and out-value our opponent before they even know what hit them. That's kind of the main idea behind the deck here. And also at our top end, we had a couple copies of Royal Scions. If we flat out or we're not having the right answers, we can always +1 to draw and discard a card. But most of the time, we're just going to use this for the +2/+0 first strike and trample ability. And then, of course, if it sticks around a few turns till you can -8, then that can be kind of a way to close out games as well. And just having a Planeswalker down is a nice distraction sometimes from all of your creatures, as then they have to focus their attention on the Scions. Card advantage, power advantage, engine, and leave your creatures alone, and that's kind of where you really want them to be, because Royal Scions is just kind of a nice supplemental card. It's not like the star of this deck or anything like that. We also had a couple copies of Burning Prophet, just a personal favorite in any kind of a deck that focuses on non-creature spells. It is a human, so we can't mutate it, but however, just a 1/3 that gets a +1/+0 boost every time we cast a non-creature spell, and then getting to scry as well. That's really the key thing here. Is we have to be super efficient as we can, and so any kind of things we can do to scry and kind of fix our draws so we can find the exact card that we need to close out games as quickly as possible. Because obviously, with all these 1/3s and 1/1 flyers, it's going to be hard to close out games. So you need to get those counters, get those spells, disrupt your opponent's early game as much as possible, and then just crash through for a ton of damage out of nowhere. And the other creature we're running here is a couple copies of Hushbringer. So we're in Jeskai colors, but white's kind of the splash, so just 2 of. Guessing there's going to be a lot of enter the battlefield triggers. Elementals seem like really, really powerful right now, and of course Simic and Sultai shenanigans. Obviously, mutate is not affected by this card because it's a little bit different, because it's not when the creature enters the battlefield, it's when the creature mutates something happens. So that's something to keep in mind. But obviously, it also does affect dying, so like the sacrifice decks, things like that. Kind of shuts them down as well. Even though it is just a 1/2 flyer, it is a little bit fragile, but if we can just kind of slow down our opponent a little bit, then of course the lifelink and flying part of it, we do have ways to kind of buff it up and kind of crash in for damage. Obviously Royal Scions and a couple of other spells you're about to see. And so for some protection, we got a couple copies of Keep Safe. That's the other new card that we just got from Ikoria. It's a fantastic spell. 2 mana, instant speed. We counter a spell that targets a permanent you control and draw a card. Like, man, that's pretty much perfect. So obviously there are some ways around it. There's like that bat that mutates and destroys a card, kind of like the Chupacabra effect. So that doesn't really protect us against that. But any other sort of target removal, obviously we got some really fantastic options like Heartless Act and Prey Upon, or whatever it's called, things like that. So there's a lot of really powerful removal spells that just came out in the new set, and Keep Safe is one way for us to protect our creatures, since we do just kind of need 1 or 2 creatures to stick and then just get them really big. Alright, so for our 1-drop mana spells, we got 4 Opt, of course, just fantastic. That scry effect, so we can find the exact spell that we need, draw a card, trigger any of our non-creature triggers, and then kind of once for split between Unsummon and Stern Dismissal. Unsummon is nice because you can bounce your own creatures to protect them from removal, and of course Stern Dismissal is only your opponent's creatures, but also hits their enchantments. So if we need to hit an actual enchantment, that works great. If it's a creature like a Thassa or something like that, it's indestructible and it's hard for us to interact with otherwise, we can at least kind of slow them down, and basically we're just trying to out-temper our opponent any way that we can, and at 1 mana, this is just a perfect way to do that. So Infuriate, as target creature gets +3/+2 at 1 red mana. That works really well with the Arcanist, being able to get anything back that we want. In the main deck, everything else is going to be 1 mana anyways, but we do have a couple cards in the sideboard that are like 2 mana. And so Infuriate will help us cast those by increasing the Dreadhorde Arcanist power, so we can then cast bigger spells. And then, of course, being able to do this as like combat tricks, as another way to kind of deal with your opponent's creatures. And then Samut Sprint is just another powerful way to kind of interact with your opponent's creatures in like a combat trick kind of way, because we do have like these 1/3 creatures and 1/2 creatures. So we really just need to increase their power, and that way we can kind of catch them off guard. And of course, your opponent is playing a very removal-heavy deck. Samut Sprint is going to come in key, because if they wipe the board and you still have a creature in hand, or you draw into one, then you can Samut Sprint, and you can haste that creature in and get some damage, and then force your opponent to find additional answers. And then, of course, all 4 shocks as well. And yeah, I think that's pretty much the deck. So we are running 22 lands. We'd have the draw and scry effects, so we can find those 3rd and 4th lands when we need them, but we want to try to keep it as low to the ground as possible. So I think 22 is the right number. So 1 plain, 2 island, 3 mountain. And then, of course, all the shock lands. Running the new 3-colored land, the Triome, just as a 2 of. We are a pretty aggressive deck, so I don't think you want to run anything more than 2. Like, you definitely don't want to be running all 4 of these, because you're just going to run into these like all the time. We do have a lot of 1 mana spells, but we can definitely afford to take turn 1 off sometimes, because our creatures don't come down until turn 2 anyways. And so playing one of these on turn 1 is kind of where you want to be. And after that, you want to find your untapped lands or shock lands, so you can kind of curve out and do what you need to do on curve. And then a couple Fabled Passages for some extra fixing here. And going over the sideboard real quick, obviously still work in progress. This is day 1 of the new meta, so we don't really know exactly how things are going to play out. Some people are still playing the decks from the previous season. Some people are starting to incorporate new cards. Some people are playing all new decks. So obviously it's going to be a little bit of the Wild West for the next couple of weeks. So any decks and sideboards are always going to be kind of a work in progress, while everyone just kind of plays around and tries to figure out what's going on. But this is where I'm at so far. Light of Hope is another new card that we have. Again, just looking for 1 mana instant and sorcery spells to interact with our opponent. This is just a really amazing card they gave us here. We can choose to gain 4 life, destroy an enchantment, or put a +1/+1 counter on a target creature. So this works really well against like a Jeskai Fires, or anything like mono red. We can gain the life. We can destroy their Annex, which is an enchantment creature. Or if they try to shock one of our creatures, we can put a +1/+1 counter on it and put it out of shock range or skewer the critics range, whatever the case may be. So that's pretty fantastic. And then some additional Stern Dismissal and one Unsummon. Just tried to keep that split the same, just one of each. And a couple of Samut Sprint, like I was saying, for like those board wipes, post board wipe, we can haste a creature in and really keep pressuring our opponent as much as possible and give them a little time to find answers as we can. Another new card here is Drannith Magistrate. This seems pretty interesting sideboard tech here. It's a 2-mana 1/3. It is a human, so we won't be able to mutate it, same as our Burning Prophet, but your opponent can't cast spells from anywhere other than their hands. So this shuts down Companion, and it shuts down Escape, and there might be one or two other things I'm not really thinking of, but those are two pretty powerful things to shut down. Obviously, Uro's like everywhere, even like Kroxa and things like that. And then, of course, people are going to be running the new Companion cards. So yeah, it gives us a way to kind of interact with some of those decks as well. And 1/3 is, 3 toughness is pretty reasonable. Aether Gust. Obviously, there's so much mono red and Simic and Sultai in standard right now. This is just kind of a must. Even probably something you consider for the main deck, but we're just running a couple copies here in the sideboard. And for some additional protection from board wipes or any like really big spells that we have a difficulty deal with otherwise, 2 copies of Disdainful Stroke. And for those decks that are very targeted removal heavy, 2 more copies of Keep Safe. And just from watching the streamer event yesterday, it seemed like there was a lot of the new decks are very focused on drawing tons and tons of cards and getting card advantage that way. So we're going to want 1 copy of Narset and kind of try to shut those decks down a little bit. And of course, being able to search for non-creature spells is synergizes already with what we're trying to do, so there's really no downside to running at least 1 copy of Narset. Obviously, there's some other cards you could consider for a build like this. That 4-mana enchantment that we got, but that's just too slow at turn 4 to then try to wait till your next turn to actually get some value off of. Like by turn 4, we need to actually have our creatures out and be casting spells and interacting with our opponent and really putting as much pressure on them as possible and taking a turn off to try to draw cards later on. Just seems like it's way too slow for this style deck. Alright, so we have a creature, we have a draw, some interaction, and a Scions. The hand's not amazing, but seems decent. So we'll keep. So we do have white mana for the Hushbringer, so I think we just Fabled Passage here. Red. Okay, probably just grab a island on their end step. Okay, so it looks like our opponent's on Gruul, or maybe a Teamer. Okay, we'll grab that island. And the new artwork on some of these cards is pretty beautiful. Oh, we've been pretty slow today. There we go. Gonna do the Sacred Foundry, have all of our colors, and Hushbringer, what you got? So let's see what they do, but we're probably looking at Royal Scions next turn, giving our Hushbringer +2/+0. Drumgully. Okay. Well, we don't need to deal with that. It is out of shock range, but it is all we have Stern Dismissal. I mean, we can Stern Dismissal it now. That might be the best play, but just get the Royal Scions down.
With my sister by my side,
Just gain some life.
You will not block our noble
And we'll
path.
see if they're just using Grumgully as a value engine for creatures, or if they're like on a Goblin build. There were some of those running around the last standard. Ominous Ambush. Okay, so right away we are punished. It's nice to not Royal Scions, at least we're kind of mana efficient, but
You have the heart of a coward.
do need to find some answers here. So let's see what we draw. I might want to probably do the draw and discard here unless we find a creature. There's a creature. This auto tapper is atrocious. And these shocks aren't really doing much good. Let's go ahead and see what we get. Throw away shock and pass the turn. So we have Samut Sprint and we have Stern Dismissal here. Vivian. I don't need a 5th land at this point. Just looking for more ways to deal with the board. We're pretty far behind at this point though.
From the smallest ant to the largest hydra, nature is
We're gonna put a couple counters or fight my okay, we can put it up to 4 toughness. So if we don't need that, tap land. That's why we don't run more than 2. Opt is okay. I think I'd rather have a Unsummon or something else here.
You picked the wrong fight.
Training.
Let's opt, see if we can find some. There we go. Take that, bounce the Druid, and then we can get in at. We can just shock. Infuriate's okay. And shock Vivian, get that off the board. Actually, maybe we should be digging for creatures here. Let's go ahead and bottom that. We do have the Samut Sprint still.
I've let Scotland down.
We'll have good attacks next turn, but we'll see what we can find. Probably Apex would be one of our better draws, although we need a couple draws here to get back in this. They shock in, that's not good. So they have Grumgully and Spellbreaker or something here. So no Royal Scions, and we were kind of drawn. We are basically in top deck mode, and our opponent still has 4 cards in hand. Okay, Grumgully comes down. He's shocked in, so they must have another 3-mana spell. Okay, I guess they changed their mind on how to sequence that. And yeah, now we're pretty far behind. Might have to cast this just for the scry to try to dig for some more answers, but we need something here. Opponent's going pretty wide. And that Grumgully putting counters on things is pretty brutal. Puts them out of shock range. Now we're seeing a way we can come back from this. We're going to start taking a ton of damage, and we don't really have any good answers forthcoming. And even if we do, we need multiple ways of dealing with these creatures. So I would say we're pretty much out of it at this point. Attacking the big boy, yeah. Any kind of a Domri's ambush or anything like them, or anything on their side, and they'll be able to close this game out here pretty quickly. And I think we Samut Sprint this just to get some life. And scry. Would have been nice to have that earlier, but I think we just need more bounce effects. Attack for 3. They go down to 8. We go up to 16, but we're staring at a bunch of damage on the way back. Harpooner takes out Hushbringer. Oh wait. Of course Hushbringer shuts down the enter the battlefield trigger, so no fight. So we get to keep our Hushbringer around a little bit longer, but the Harpooner does have reach. So not really a whole lot of value left. So we're basically dead, but we'll see what we draw. So anyway, for us to deal 8 damage here. Yeah, that's not it. Alright, so on to game 2. Okay, so up against Ghoul counters. Obviously you want all of these. And Aether Gust is a must. We have some Damry's Ambush, so I don't know if I want to take these out. Scion seemed pretty mediocre there. So did Shock. So we'll shave that down to 2. I think 2 is fine for the Damry's Ambush. We can just stave off 1, I think we'll be okay, but not the best start, but we'll see how we do here in the game 2. Alright. 4 lands is a bit heavy, but we do have the Arcanist, and then we can unsummon plus mutate here, or just get it down as a 2/3. And I guess we'll just leave the Sacred Foundry. And we can Mountain. Shock it in for a Help Collector. Gateway Plaza. Okay. So we have like a little budget mana base going on here. Just attack for 1. They're not going to block. And I think we just play it down as a 2/3 to try to get more creatures down. They're pretty creature heavy. And next turn we'll have creature plus unsummon open. And they still don't have good attacks. Mutate just for fun, and we also get the unsummon back. And bounce both without having to exile it. So decline, hit for 4. It's not amazing, but putting some pressure on him. If these were spells, we'd be in good shape, but as 2 lands in hand, it's not really ideal. That's perfect. So we can get rid of the Pelt Collector since it's just a 2. And we can unsummon this and put it back in their hand, get in for 4 more. Our opponent's seen enough. Guess they respected the 2 cards in hand. I think we were still a little behind there. Definitely going first and actually having some nice interaction made a huge difference there, being able to shock the Pelt Collector. But having that Grumgully down just makes all the creatures so much bigger. There we go, now we got our Sprite Dragon. Okay, so we can lead with Triome and shock in the Hallowed Fountain. Although, if they have a Harpooner, then Hushbringer is maybe just the safer option. Preserver. I'll just deal with their creatures now. So next turn we can Hushbringer. Okay, we don't really care too much about that. Just Hushbringer, so gives us some protection from a Harpooner, and then we can Sprite Dragon plus cast a spell. Grumgully with Riot. Attack in. Nope, just gonna make it big. red source. Let's grab red. We could shock in and do a bunch of stuff here. Don't hate that. Start by getting rid of their creature, tempo. Just opt here. Save the Samut sprint for, yeah, something like that. Attack for 4. Get a little bit of life back. So now they have to spend their turn playing Grumgully again. This time they're going to go in for haste. That's probably what they should have done the first time. Sacred Foundry. Not amazing. No more lands, just need spells here. Opt, see what we can find, put some more counters. Wow. Lands aplenty. More lands. What do we want? Could bounce it again. Just keep slowing them down. Down to 7. Gotta get the Sacred Foundry down. So now we got 7 in the air. And a Hushbringer shuts down any harpooner, at least from fighting. We'll still have to deal with it, but I believe we have a shock. Yep, shock and deal with that. Potentially, although with Riot, they could give it to 3 toughness. Alright, so our opponent ran out of gas there. Sweet. Alright, so yeah, that's my first deck for you guys. Obviously, there's still lots of room to brew. And yeah, definitely saw the Sprite Dragon. Like, if you can get that going, whew, that's a sweet card. Sweet, sweet card. And the Dreadhorde Arcanist and things like that. There's definitely lots of fun you can have there. Alright, guys, thanks for watching. And look forward to seeing you in the next one. Alright, take care.